And I'm gonna go live. Oh, wait, I need to do screen. Desktop 2. Are you looking at the ad?
I am. Mhm.
Go live.
That I am.
And got it. And once I see the zoom twist, then I'm good to go with, hey, you're on Lunch Conversations of Randy and Teddy. And Lunch Conversations sponsored by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. The Elder Law Firm is all about helping you to help those that you're committed to with estate planning, elder care planning. They're in Greensboro, North Carolina. Their phone number is 336-396-4551. If you want to have a conversation about elder care planning or estate planning, reach out to the Elder Law Firm and let them know that Randy Wooden told you to give them a call. Randy, did I give you enough time to pull that off, buddy?
Yeah, I think so, because I'm highly skilled at this by now. But nevertheless, Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, and the director for our professional center based out of Winston-Salem. But I have clients across the country. In fact, a few that are on the call today. We help job hunters, folks typically with a degree, maybe owned a small business or they're in a leadership role, that kind of a thing. And like I said, we're free. We're happy to help. Find me on LinkedIn. We work by appointment. It's all virtual. So we're here and we get together a couple times a week. And usually we have a third person and sometimes a fourth person here. But not today, Teddy. What's going on, man?
Well, I got an 11th hour, literally at about 11 o'clock this morning, about an hour ago. John Hyman, who is an employment attorney, who was going to come on the show and talk with us about, what's going on in the world in the U.S. and about being prepared to be able to manage the growth of unionization in the employment space. John sent me a message, said his daughter had to go to the emergency room. And so he went running off to take care of his family, which is the right thing to do. And I said, dude, don't worry about it. Randy and I are experts. We're professionals and we know how to deal with this. And we're going to talk about that a little bit because it opened up the door for a good conversation about, being prepared for worst case scenarios, whatever those are. But after we talk about that, then Randy and I are going to pivot into a slightly different conversation that we want our audience to participate in. We got 10,000 people in here. My good friend Katie's on here. Katie, good to have you here. Debbie's here. Dale, Chan. Look, we want you to be a part of this conversation in the second segment of the show. And I can promise you, you will enjoy the conversation as Randy and I share with you stuff that we've never publicly shared before. I think maybe.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So I better put my seatbelt on for that one. Okay.
Yeah. So let's play around with the first thing that we were talking about, Randy, and that is, stuff happens. We lost our speaker, and you and I had to figure out how to get prepared. What was the worst thought that came to your mind when I called you up and told you that?
And again, all this stuff is ad lib. We haven't taking notes and all kinds of stuff here. This is just kind of off the cuff.
But you haven't scripted it, Randy. Look at all the notes I wrote, dude.
I wrote down a couple things, but usually I've got a mitt full of stuff. But the first thing was, hey, what's going on with the daughter? I mean, I've got kids; they're grown, but when I remember ER trips to the ER, not a whole bunch of them, but when they happen, it's serious time, and everything else stops. So I totally get that. And then we got thinking, okay, well, what do we do? Do we just run the show and just, what do we do? But I'm an old radio guy. So for me, I could talk about, I could read the phone book all day and probably put people to sleep, but I have no problem with that. And just normally we're the interviewer. I'd like to have us interview each other. So we're going to do that a little bit later on. But you know what? I think everybody can relate to this. We've all had poop happen at certain times. Something comes up, whether it's a meeting, whether it's an interview, whether it's a date, whether it, you name it, where you're going to, yeah, exactly. How can I help?
Yeah.
Exactly. And these things come up, they're not planned, but how do we address that if we're in the job hunt or if we're in the business world? So we're going to cover a little bit about that. Teddy, I know you've been down that path before on both the, hey, I'm late, and also, oh no, they're late. What are some thoughts you have about how you tackle some of that?
I mean, the first thing is,
Yeah.
I have a joke that I've been saying for years, Randy, and I don't say it so much anymore because it's really, it's purely a joke. But I heard a guy say this in real life one time to an employee. When did I tell you that your personal life can get in the way of my career? This guy said, he said something like, when did I tell you your personal life can get in the way of you doing what I need you to do for our business? Now, I heard that very bluntly said to an employee. And I'm like,
Wow.
man, that's the rudest thing I've ever heard someone say. So I used to say that as a joke to people. But, when I got that real life message from John, I'm like, oh, damn, man, this is real. This guy's, he's got something really important to do and he's not going to show up. I didn't care if the show happened or not. My very first, and I told you, Randy, I'm reading a book by a friend of mine, Elizabeth Cottrell, and the book is called Heartspoken. And this is a good book for a grumpy old man to read, Randy, because I had to respond to John in a way that was appropriate. And I was like, man, what do I say? And then my very first words I wanted to say is, don't worry about the show. And I'm like, well, I don't need to say that because I know he's not worried about the show. And so I wrote back to him, man, I am so sorry your daughter is injured or hurt. And I hope that you guys get through this and that she's well soon, period. I didn't even bring up the show. I just said, period. Actually, I did. The second sentence I said to him was, dude, let's talk when you can. Then period. I didn't say anything about the show because it really was not important. So, it happens. And we've been lucky at 127 shows. It hasn't happened. We've had a few, close calls.
Yeah, we did. We had twice we've had to record it in advance. One time the morning of, and I think the other time the day prior. Yeah. So we did that. And then we had live segments at the front end and back end of it. But the core piece, the guest part, was recorded. Yeah. I know sometimes.
Tell anybody that though, Randy.
We weren't supposed to. Well, that's the magic of television. We can do whatever. It's the magic of TV. I was going to say, I tell job hunters when it comes to an interview, if you're going to be a minute late, sitting in traffic, and there's a mindset that goes here, hopefully you leave early enough, right? And you leave early, you're not under the rush. But when you get stuck in traffic, your heart starts beating a little faster, and you start getting nervous. Yeah. Well, if you care about the interview, you get nervous. Yeah. So let's preface it with that.
Yeah. But maybe you're just taking the interview because your mother-in-law told you to.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
So what do you do?
Well, I tell people, make sure you've got the phone number of your interviewer and you call them and you let them know that you left them plenty of time, but there seems to be, XYZ. I expect I'll be there and maybe a few minutes late, but I feel like you need to make that call. Now, if something is so serious, like again, a child in the ER, something like that, where you're going to have to reschedule, then you need to make that call also. But don't just show up 5 minutes late and act like nothing's wrong with that, because there is something wrong with that. And if I'm looking to hire you.
Yeah. And wouldn't you tell me earlier? You said if someone says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late, you should never say that's okay.
Right. Yeah. I was taught that years ago. If I'm in sales and I'm sitting in the lobby and I've got a 10 o'clock with Teddy Burriss, he's going to buy my fantastic widget. And it's 10 after 10. At some point I get up and I leave and I say to the receptionist, apparently this is not a good time. I'll be back in touch. My attorney will be in touch, but I'll get back with you. But if it's 5-10 minutes, person comes out, oh, I apologize, I'm late. Don't say, oh, that's okay. Because it's not okay. It's rude. And what you might just want to say is, well, that happens. Yeah. Let's get to business. And then you move in. But don't understand that it's okay, because it's not okay. My time is important just like your time is important. You ever been to a doctor's office? Of course. Yeah. and an hour goes by and they expect you to sit there.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
I can tolerate that, Randy, but they got to tolerate the fact I'm bringing out a beer and a cigar while I'm waiting.
How do you do that if you're wearing a mask?
And then there's that. Yeah.
You can't do it all. But yeah, the whole thing is that stuff happens. And we had Melissa Hughes on. She's the
neuroscience geek.
Neuroscience geek. In fact, she was one of the ones that we had to record a day in advance or earlier on. And she talked about how the brain works when it comes to stress. And she said the easiest thing you can think of, and I remember this example, she said, is driving. And let's say you're driving to a meeting and you leave in plenty of time, you're doing great. You got to slow down here, there, and it's not a big deal. And all of that happens because you've got plenty of time. You're not worried. You start to worry when it becomes unknown whether you'll make it in time.
I remember this conversation.
Once you know that you ain't getting there in time, then you relax again.
Yeah.
You know, your mind says there's no way I can make this goal, whatever the goal is. So now the tension level goes down. And that's the easiest way she could describe it, is dealing with traffic. But it always happens. So make sure you have your interviewer's phone number with you, or the person that you're going to be meeting with. Anymore, shoot, you could probably do a Zoom from your car if you had to.
Yeah. I can.
You know, you've got the technology.
One hand with the beer, one hand with the cell phone, and my kneecap driving. Hey, well, let's go to serious for a minute. So here's what I do, Randy. One of the ways I manage this,
Lombardi time.
Getting people to my meetings. If they say they want to meet with me, whether it's in person or via Zoom, and most of them are via Zoom lately.
Right.
When I use a tool called Calendly, and a bunch of people who are in the audience have used my Calendly before. You know, you pick the right day and time. It sends you a calendar invite back with, and when you're picking the right day and time, here's what I ask for. First, tell me what we're going to talk about. Secondly, tell me your cell phone number so that I have that in case of an emergency.
Yeah.
And that's on every calendar invite that I send out to people, and they get the Zoom link. And I did it this morning. A good friend of ours, I was talking with him this morning at 10 o'clock. At 10:02, he wasn't there. Now, you know me well enough. I'm pretty ticked off. I'm being satirical. I was like, so how do I deal with this? I could get ticked off. I could sit there and go, wonder who's going to make it. My rule is this: if you're late to a virtual, I'd love to hear you in the audience. What's your rule? If you're late to a virtual conversation, or someone's late to your conversation, how long do you wait before you call them? I'll tell you what I do. Usually 1 or 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes. I'm starting to type in the dude's phone number. I'm starting to type in their email address. And because I have phone numbers, I go straight for the phone number as long as I have it. And I start calling them. Usually, Randy, this is what happens. As the phone is ringing, I hear beep, beep, and they're showing up. But sometimes I get them on the phone. They go, oh my golly, I forgot. We don't have time to wait for people. And by the way, by calling them or asking them what's going on, you don't need to be rude. It's just very businesslike. So look, Dale says he uses Calendly, links all my calendars together, schedules on Zoom. College rules: 10-minute late, you or a family member better be in the ER. Is that a college rule? I like that. Lisa says 3 minutes max.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
And there is the showing up too early, and that puts a different level of state. Let me hit that for a second. You know, all right. So I have, let's say, a 12 noon interview with Teddy, and I show up at 11:15, 11:30. It's rude of me to ask to meet with you, then to tell whoever the receptionist, or there's usually somebody there that will greet. That's rude because it puts you on the spot, Teddy. You either have to stop doing what you were doing, and I'll use the word acquiesce. You like that word, Teddy? We've got a good guest next week, Sarah Rosinski. She's all about word use. But what it also says is that I expect you to drop what's important to you, what you're doing, to take care of me. And while my mama might think I'm pretty important, that's about it,
Yeah.
So what I tell people is do it 5 minutes ahead of time, not 10 or 15, but 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes. Sit in the lobby, sit in the car if you have to. Do what you have to, but don't put the pressure on that other person to drop what they're doing to come out and see you. And sometimes I'll tell you what, and I've had this happen with friends I know or whatever. The interviewer will say, you know what, the heck with this. I'm going to make them wait. I know they're out there and I could go out 20 minutes, half an hour earlier, but you know what, dadgummit, I'm going to make them wait.
My britches is bigger than your britches.
And all that does is create a negative first impression. And I can tell you story after story about my days as a headhunter and rather interesting scenarios that happen when people do out of the ordinary things. Let's leave it.
Now Mike says
leave it at that.
They're too early is not his issue. And I get that, Mike, but I think especially in an interview perspective with a candidate that you think you really want, I think you should walk out there and at least acknowledge that they are here. Let them know that you're busy. And as soon as you clear up, you will get with them. Let's go to the virtual side there, Randy. Because I use Calendly and I use Zoom.
Right.
If you log on to a Zoom meeting that I sent you before I'm there, I get an email that says you're there. So like now I see you're there at 20 minutes before I expect you to be there. And I won't necessarily click on that because sometimes people click on the link just to make sure it's working.
Yeah, I do that too sometimes. Yeah.
But the other side of that too is that let's say you and I, or let's say that Lisa and I have a meeting scheduled for 2:30 this afternoon.
Yeah.
And at 2 o'clock, I realized, oh my golly, I'm wide open. I thought I was going to be nonstop till 2:30. But at 2 o'clock, I realized I'm open. Now, because I know Lisa, because I know you and I know Todd, I know Mike, or Katie, I may very well message you and say, I am open earlier if you are. If not, I'll see you at 2:30.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. And from a frustrating thing that I can deal with Goodwill, and I work by appointment. And, these are job hunters that ostensibly, you like that? There's another good word. Ostensibly we would think, interested in landing a job. Very often they won't acknowledge my Outlook calendar request. So even though we had verbally agreed that this is the proper time, but then they don't call, they don't show, nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't hear from them. Now I can't hire them or fire them, but if I could, that's not a good look. And so I don't care whether it's somebody who can do something to help you, or it's an employer, or it's a friend or whatever, just be accountable. That's all. I mean, you're not asking for
you ghost me and we ain't having words. You ghost me for a meeting and that's a whole nother issue. Yeah.
The no-show piece. And I deal with folks in the staffing business. And I mean, that's just, no call, no show. And also in our Goodwill when it deals with the retail folks, that can happen. If people don't show up for work, they don't call. And after 3 times of that, I think that's grounds for termination for a lot of employers you just can't do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if there's anything else we want to talk about as far as
let's talk about the last one, the technology issue.
Okay.
Man. So,
right.
We're doing most of our work virtually. You're doing your scheduled coaching session at Goodwill. You're doing all that through, are you using Teams or Zoom?
Zoom.
Yeah. So you're doing it all on Zoom. What do you
Zoom
do
or
with,
phone? Usually just the phone. Just the phone usually.
Okay. Oh, so you're doing just the phone. Why don't you do Zoom, dude?
I can, but most people don't want to do Zoom. They're zoomed out they just want to talk on the phone. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I don't, man. I'm 99.9 Zoom. I mean, because I use Calendly, it sends a Zoom link. Now I have had a few people call me and say, "Hey, Teddy, I can't do Zoom." But what do you do if your phone's dead, or what do you do if your technology is not working? How do you deal with that? The phone is probably easier because you pick up. Wait a minute, Randy, you do this, don't you?
That one. Yeah.
Hey, I just. Do you have a landline in your office? You do.
I have a landline in my office. I have no idea how to work the phone system though, Teddy. It's been there only a couple, 3 years. It takes me a while to get used to it, but no, I use my cell phone for a lot of this, and I will use Zoom from time to time. It really just depends on what the person prefers, and quite often people are fine with the virtual piece, and they don't really care one way or the other.
Yeah.
I like phone because it allows me to walk around, get my little steps in, Teddy. So you know me, I'm watching my figure. So
join me at 6:15 in the morning, big guy.
All right, I hear you. I hear you squawking over there. All right, so let's pivot here a little bit with this technology. We usually interview each other. By the way, in case you've joined us late, it's 20 minutes into the hour. John Hyman, who's an attorney, an employment attorney, he was to come in, had a family emergency happen. We hope things work out well, as can be expected with that. We'll try to get him back on and sometime here in the future. We were going to talk about the rise in union organizing. What does that mean for, what do businesses need to know? What do employees need to know? And so usually we're the interviewers, but I want to interview Teddy a little bit and have him interview me a little bit about how we got to doing what we do and some of the twists and turns along the way.
And open the door for the audience. If you guys look, we jokingly say in the green room, you can ask us any questions. So consider this as in the green room. Ask us any questions about anything. And, where we can, we'll give you a real answer. Where we can't, we'll tell you it's not a real answer and we'll play with it. How's that?
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, back on this union thing. I remember my dad, he worked for a utility company, natural gas pipeline. They're part of Duke Energy now. I guess everything's part of Duke Energy. Seems like they're huge. But anyway, a little tickle in the throat here. But anyway, so just reading a couple of the comments in here. And I remember him saying that they treat him so well there. Again, he was not college educated, he was not in senior management, he was a worker bee. But he said they treat you so well that there was never a talk of unionizing. But I think of the pendulum, and it swings back and forth. And back in the old days when you had just horrible labor, taking advantage of workers. I mean, it was a horrible situation, the work hours, the ages, and there were a lot of what I'll call grievances, or a lot of, I hate to use the word legitimate, because legitimate, it means different things. It depends on what side of the argument you're on. Yeah. But the point was, unions were huge back in the day. And then companies began to adapt to that and up their game, again, painting with a broad brush here, so that workers didn't feel that they needed to unionize, because it does create some of this. Let's be honest, when you get the union versus employer. But now we're also seeing the pendulum go back to the power being with the workers more so, because we're now at a point where a lot of companies, it's hard to find folk. You even see was it Starbucks? Yeah. And other
at the store level. That's kind of surprising to me. I would have thought it had been the company overall, but they're unionizing at the store level. Yeah.
And so we're seeing a little bit more of that, because again, now workers realize that they have a little bit more leverage than perhaps they had. So we'll see. I wanted to unpack all that with John, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that down the road. Yeah. But so Teddy, let me again, we're going to wing this. It's going to be fun. I knew you back when you were an IT guy, right? You're selling IT services. So and now you're this $10 billion a year in your mind, mega company, galactically known, and all this. So would you wake up one day and just say, what got you down this? What's your why?
So, and you and I may have talked about this at one time. You may have forgotten this. Okay. So back in the days when I was an IT consultant, strategist, doing technology, and then got into IT sales, I used to use this term, Randy. My purpose is to help organizations be successful. That was my line. That was my line all the time. I'm here to help companies be successful. I'm here to help companies be successful. Yep. And by the way, when you're selling B2B services, and you're doing B2B work, that better be your line. I'm here to help an organization be successful. I used to believe that was the right thing to say. Then I started doing this, dude. I studied Dale Carnegie. I'm looking at my books. I studied Dale Carnegie. I studied Ralph Waldo Emerson. I studied Zig Ziglar. I studied that other dead dude, Norman Vincent Peale. And I discovered a whole nother way of thinking, and I changed my mantra. And my mantra is, I'm here to help individuals be successful. And that changed my entire philosophy about business, changed my entire philosophy about everything that I do. And it really got me thinking, maybe it's time for me to change and get out of this IT world and find a way to help individuals more directly. And it was 2009. I don't know if, I think you and I may have talked back then. It was 2000. I mean, I knew we knew each other, but I can't remember specifically if we actually talked about the pivot that I was about ready to do.
Yep,
and
we did.
My wife said, you know, you can go do whatever you want to do once we're done raising the daughters. We raised 4 daughters. I bought a bunch of wedding dresses and prom dresses and college, you know, degrees, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, you're done. Go do whatever you want to do. And you know what I wanted to do.
I guess you wanted to travel the country in a.
No. Remember when I said I wanted to be a dock boy?
Oh, that. Okay. Yeah. You're going to be a dock boy.
Yeah, I was going to be a dock boy, man.
Yeah.
And I kind of figured I'd better do something a little bit more meaningful than that. And I discovered LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and Tinder and Bumble. And I decided, you know what? I'm playing with all these things. I figured out how to make them, use them deliberately. I'm going to go teach them. That was 2009 that I discovered that. And in 2010, December 15th, 2010, Randy, I walked into, actually it was November 15th, 2010. I walked into my boss's office, who's a personal friend of mine, and I had a one piece of paper in my hand. And on that one piece of paper, I think it was 1 or 2 sentences. And her name was Donna. I said, Donna, I love you. Donna, I'm leaving. And I said, I will leave December 15th, 2010. That was my termination letter that I handed her. She looked at me and says, you're joking, right? And I said, no, I'm serious. And I told her the story and she accepted it. She called her boss, Randy, of this, you know, now much bigger company that we worked for. She called her boss, and you know what happens when a salesperson says he's quitting? Get out the door right now, boy.
Yep.
He told her that, and she said, no, I need him. Because part of my plan was I was going to spend a month going to my clients and introducing the new dude.
Yep.
So you know what I did for a month, Randy? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and beer on the company. And I went and met all my clients and introduced them to the new guy.
Nice.
Then I quit and started this journey. So it's a blast.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's turn the tables on you. How did you make this pivot for you? How did you, what got you to make the pivot from radio into recruiting, into this whole world of outsourced consulting and training, and now for a nonprofit?
Yeah. Well, you know, the old, you've got a face for radio applies. So I got into.
But I've never said that to you out loud, have I?
Not not that I remember. But I did radio, but my ex-wife and we had twin sons still do, but you know, twin sons. And you start looking around and say, hey, you know, if you stay in radio, and it's all well and good. It's kind of fun, but you're going to move around a lot. There's not a whole lot of job security. And might there be something else you could do that could be, I don't know, more stable, more fulfilling, more fill in the blank, more money, whatever. So I actually hired a company up in Ohio for a couple $300 that help people make career changes. Because at that point, all I could seemingly do is get another job in radio. And that's what I did not want to do. And again, fast forward a little bit, you talk about you're out the door when they learn that you're looking. In radio, I was not under contract. They found out that I was looking, literally, I got a phone call. We were traveling to relatives and we were passing through Indiana or whatever. I forget where we were at the time, but we were out of state. I would leave phone numbers of where we were staying at relatives. And I got a call from the program director. And he says, Randy, he says, is it true? He says, I've been told by reliable sources that you're looking. And I said, well, yeah. I said, but I don't want to go to another radio station. He goes, well, good luck. He says, we're going to start looking for your replacement. I hope you find whatever it is that you want to do. So clock was ticking. Long story short, I answered an ad for a recruiter. And I think I shared this in maybe a past lunch show that we did, but I was to meet a guy named Dan. He was the business owner of the recruiting firm on a Sunday late afternoon. And Dan, I believe, is deceased now, but Dan used to enjoy cocktails. Let's just say
anytime.
Yeah. But Dan agreed to meet with me on a Sunday afternoon at the office. So I went there. And after that, he ended up hiring me, but he said he was this close to canceling the meeting because, he was enjoying whatever he was enjoying at the time. And here I was, just this radio guy, but it allowed me to make the change. My mom was a school teacher. So then I got into recruiting, and here's why. Here's why I got into recruiting and why I made the pivot. I got into recruiting because I got to thinking it would be good to have a skill that would play in any industry, any job market. I mean, hiring and retaining talent was key.
Yeah.
And this is back in early 90s, where there was this whole thing of where are we going to find workers? And of course, you got to see a whole lot more of offshoring and so forth as far as the work being done overseas. But the whole idea was, where do we find people? And we're seeing that same thing now with our population aging, and we're just, the whole turnover tsunami and everything. The idea was, why don't I have a skill that can play, again, in different industries, economies, that kind of a thing. So I got into recruiting. But what I didn't like about recruiting, and it's part of the business, you've been in sales, people lie to you left and right. They lie. I don't like getting lied to any more than the next guy does. Yeah. I want to help people. They lie to you. Hey, we need to fill this job yesterday. And now they don't return my phone calls. Or guess what? I get a candidate who's, I didn't tell you I took a job. Sorry. Yeah. So you get all this. People just, they'll tell you what they think they need to too many times.
Yeah.
And if I could distill it down, what I really liked was helping educate, ask good questions of candidates and employers so that they can go in with their eyes open, and it would make for a good match.
Yeah.
And whether that's, what do you call it, training or just asking good questions, but that's the part that I really liked.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then I went back to the company. Well, Teddy, it's 1:30. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Then you'll tell me the rest of that story.
Yeah. Let's take the break and talk about our sponsor.
Yeah. So lunch conversations with Randy and Teddy. Today, our special guest had a family emergency and couldn't join us. And we're hoping that emergency is being taken care of and turns out well. But we wanted to keep going with the show. So Randy and I are just sharing ideas and sharing some of our stories with us. The Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy is sponsored by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Their statement is that who's important to you and how you plan to honor your responsibilities to them is also important to the Elder Law Firm.
Yeah.
So if you need help with estate planning or elder care planning, or even I call it those 7 documents that you have to make sure your estate is in place so that $50-60 million that I have in my mind gets to the right place when I die. Call the Elder Law Firm. Their number is 336-396-4551. Let them know that Randy told you to call.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. Go ahead. Tell the rest of the story.
Yeah. By the way, if you have questions for us, throw them in there, and we'll see if we can come up with some kind of answer for you on those things. But so the part of the job I liked was the coaching part, was asking questions, the coaching part to help people make good choices. And what I did, I went back to the company I had paid a couple $100 to and said, hey, now that I've been in recruiting for a couple, 3 years, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on how the hiring process kind of works. I've seen it now as a job hunter. I've seen it as a recruiter. I've talked to a number of hiring officials. And so could I moonlight? Remember that? That's,
Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
used that word in a long time.
That's an
Could I
old term.
moonlight?
We call it
Could I-
side hustle now, don't we?
It's a side hustle.
Yeah.
Could I moonlight and help some of the clients? And a guy named Ken was the manager of the facility. And he says, sure. So that's how I got started. And then it morphed into not just one or two clients, but it morphed into essentially 2 full-time jobs. And then I was like, which one do you prefer? So anyway, that's how I got started. Did that, came down here and did it on my own for a number of years. And then Goodwill came a knocking about 10 years ago and said, hey, we're going to open a professional center. And it's the exact same kind of work that I'd been doing on my own. So I could now get a salary and benefits, and I'd have the opportunity to engage with other people, not just me, myself, and I, but others who do the kind of work I do.
Yeah.
And brainstorm on ideas and just the whole thing. So it's been a great ride. I really enjoy it. Really, really do. But it all goes back to the helping piece and being able to meld that with the communications and the writing, and I still do all the stuff on TV and newspaper and all that. It's all fun, but it's helpful. Fun.
I remember when you were starting your business out of Clemens, you were in the that office suite there on Stratford Road. I remember you called me up and you invited me to come do a video segment for some of your ad stuff.
Yeah.
You remember that? Yeah. I mean, you reached out to me back then, Randy, and thought that I was some celebrity. I'm joking, to be on your ads, you know. I can't remember what that was about. What was I can't remember the conversation.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think back too, because I started doing it out of Stratford Oaks, right the corner of Nolan and Stratford. Did that for about 3 years, and then kind of shut it down. Went to work for a couple of folks and kind of did it on the side at coffee shops, that kind of stuff, and then reopened the office at Broyhill Office Suites in Clemens. Did that for a few years, and then, like I said, then Goodwill
2009, 2010.
It's funny. It was right around the same time. Right around the same time you started into this whole career change and helping people with job hunting. And I'm thinking, this guy's a dope. I'm bailing on this thing. You know, I'm selling my office space, and I'm going to tuck my tail between my legs and go to work for a company. And I did for about a year, and then Goodwill came knocking, and so anyway, but that's how we got here. I got to ask you, Teddy, though. I mean, it's not been a 100% smooth journey for you, and I'm sure for anybody who starts out on their own. What are some things you encountered maybe you hadn't thought of that we'll call these learning opportunities?
Something we'll tell our 20-year-old self later on.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, or tell a 20-year-old, and maybe I'm telling my grandkids, because I have grandkids that, you know, I have an 18-year-old granddaughter. And so there's a couple of things that come to mind, Randy. Somebody else asked me this recently. One of the things that I remember is that I still try to remind myself every day, stay focused. If you truly believe that what you do has value to somebody and that you can make money because of that, then stay focused to it. I've had people all along the way who wanted me to do leadership coaching. They wanted me to do outplacement coaching. I've had people who wanted me to, partner with them in other organizations. And, you got to stay focused to what you truly believe. You know what I am. I'm a LinkedIn strategist. I'm not a social media strategist, even though I am a trained, certified, entity in that space. I understand social media, but I stay focused to LinkedIn. Now, the business is growing another division, but you gotta believe in what you have to offer, believe there's an audience there who wants it, and you also have to believe that you can make money doing it. And if you have those beliefs, then never waver from it. You and I have talked years ago about this, that we at 2000 in different times in the year. 2008, I took a little bit of beating, but I was still working with somebody else back then. Yeah. But along the way, things get tight and you start second guessing yourself. And I remember some times where I started thinking about, should I look for a job?
Yep.
And that was a huge mistake, because then you're telling yourself, I don't believe in what I'm doing. You're telling yourself, I don't believe I can make this work. And so you start, wavering there, diminishing your strength there, and you're focusing on finding a job, and that will destroy it. And I went through it for about 3 months, and in about a 3-month time, I realized what I was doing, and I immediately, what was the word? I put a kibosh on that entire thought process about looking for a job, and immediately went back to working on growing my business. Believe, that's my point. So here, I'm gonna throw this at you too, dude. Give me a thought for yourself about, on your journey, because I get it. You moved away from, your own business entity into working for somebody else, and that was the right fit for you. So what would you tell somebody who's 20 years old now?
Well, one thing is I told a whole bunch of people when I decided to do this on my own was back around 2002. Is when I opened the business, and I said, hey, I don't want to wake up at age 60 and look back and wonder what if. And now that 60 is in the rear view mirror, I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
It taught me things about myself. And one of the things that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I'm an only child, there's nobody to blame, it's just, you can't hide. You're not an only child. That I know.
We know that.
That I know. But I was always, hey, I can make this, I can do it. And I didn't really reach out to people and really pick their brain as much as I should have, and accepted input and sought it out and acted on it. I just kind of was my own island. And I look back and I think that I probably could have had an easier, or easier may not be the best word, but a more successful financially journey had I not been, I'll use the word hard-headed. That's maybe not the best word, but I think a lot of times, we just get focused in our own funnel and our own cocoon. And sometimes, we don't necessarily see what else is out there and take in that input. But yeah, I did. I bailed 3 times, in part because I was the primary, breadwinner. We had 2 kids, right? And I love what I do, and I'll always continue to do it on the side, but am I being a good steward of my time and money?
Yeah.
And we didn't feel like that was the best thing to do at that time. And, jobs sort of came to me based on the fact that I'm out there and people know who I am. So anyway, but, like I tell people, life's a journey, and you're going to learn as you go. You can't play it backward. You make decisions based on emotion. You try to input as much good information as you can, but you can't live it backward.
Yeah.
You can't. And you do what you can as best you can. But it's been a great run. And, I say it still is, with goodwill. And I really enjoy what I do. And I enjoy hanging out with you, Teddy. Look at this, Teddy. We're almost 3/4 into our show here.
How many people can do what you and I do all the time, where we bust our butts during the week, but within the workspace that we have to work in, and your workspace is a little different than my workspace, but in the workspace we have to deal with, I hate the word deal, the workspace we are in, we still have time to put together these 2 shows that we do.
Yeah, we make the time to do it. Todd asked, any mistakes or things that you would change? Well, for me anyway, I think I shared that. I would have sought input maybe from people wiser than I, and acted upon it. My intentions were always good, but ultimately, you may have a job you really like doing, but if you're not making the money you need to make to support those who depend on you, then you can't just, you got to change.
Yeah.
So that's the short of that. Teddy, anything you
for me,
learned or
Randy,
mistakes?
I'll tell you, I started my business off with 120 conversations. I have it in my teddyburriss@gmail.com calendar. And you and I have talked about this. I went and you were on that list. I went and had a meeting, coffee meeting, beer meeting, lunch meeting with 120 people. And I asked a lot of questions about ideas. How do you think I should do this? What should I do? Et cetera, et cetera. But then once I got done doing that, then I knew I could not, I was fortunate, I learned this from somebody. I could not build my business on an island. I had to have mentors. I had to have guides. I had to have people that I looked up to and asked for questions along the way. And I did a pretty decent job of learning along the way, hanging out with people who do what I do. Here's where I don't want to use the word fail, but here's an opportunity I did not take. And I did not build my business in a way that it could scale to truly a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And I could have. I have friends who have. I have peers in the workspace who have done that, and I love what they've created. But I didn't take that opportunity, and I don't look at it as a mistake. I look at it as just a decision that I made. However, if I would have taken some of the advice I was given about scaling my business, then two things would have happened. Number one is I would have had a $63 million business that I now say I have in my mind. I would have had something much bigger than what I pretend I have. Second thing, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't do it, I would have been a business owner instead of being a coach. And all along the way, all I've ever wanted to be is a coach. And so that's the primary reason why I didn't create that bigger entity.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a friend of mine since deceased, but I had some rough times back, health-wise, marriage-wise, financially, business, you name it. All the stressors in life, the 5 or 4, 5, 6 of them, I think I hit on about all but one of them, maybe.
All showed up in one bucket.
Kind of, yeah. We got hit by a tornado, cancer, whatever. Just, And again, I'm not. Other people have things, but all that stuff was happening all at one time. And for the most part, most of my life, I've been able to be reasonably okay with what I do. Whether it's sports, whether it's whatever. I'm not the smartest guy or the biggest guy or whatever, but I do okay until I didn't. And then it was like, oh, I felt like a failure. And I remember I had lunch with a friend. Again, he's no longer with us, but he says failure is an occurrence. It's not a character trait.
Yeah. So
I don't know where he read that. Might have been in one of your books, Teddy, that you read. I don't know, but and I got to thinking, and I thought, I keep telling other people this: learn from your past, make better choices based on new information that you have. And here I am, just beating myself all to you name it. And as a failure, because I didn't measure up to that perfection level or whatever it was that I deemed that I needed to be at. And then I began to doubt myself. And it took, that lunchtime to where I'm like, no, wait a minute, no. But I think a lot of us, we have fear of failure or success, either one. And the fear of loss is a huge motivator. Yeah. You're going to lose your health, your job, your marriage, you're going to lose a house, whatever. It's a big motivator. But sometimes also that expectation of gain is a big motivator, but the fear of success, like what, Teddy, you're not going to be able to enjoy the cigar and the 16-ounce beer in the book if you're running a $63 million company.
Yeah, no,
because you've traded that life work balance for something that financially is good, but maybe not for you and your family situation. Yeah. So it's a balance, and
Reed Hoffman, and if anybody knows what I do well enough will know that Reed Hoffman is one of the founders of LinkedIn. Reed is the host of a podcast called Masters of Scale. And I listen to this podcast every morning for about 45 minutes as I'm doing my morning walk. And this morning, Reed repeated what he said over and over and over again. And that is this: if you're not failing, you're not moving forward. And if you are going to fail, you need to fail hard and fast. Because if you fail hard, and one of the executive VPs for General Motors said that this morning when they were talking about moving GM vehicles from gas to EV, electric vehicles. They have their big plan, and they're pushing fast. $750 million investment into building new plants to make GM cars EVs, electric vehicles.
Okay.
And he says, our mission is exactly what Reed Hoffman says. We're going to push hard and fast. And when we fail, we're going to fail hard and fast, fix it, and keep moving forward. I love that philosophy. My wife doesn't like it so much when we run out of gas and we fail to get where we want to go because I didn't plan properly. That's a story for another day.
It is.
Yeah.
Hey, we've got about 10 minutes left. Ever gone back to your doubters and showed them your success?
let me tell Lisa a story.
Yeah.
And Randy knows this story because we don't see each other as often as we used to, but we talk all the time.
Yeah.
And 2010, when I decided to create this business, my father-in-law, who was retired at that point, in back 2010, 12 years ago, he was 80 years old. And he didn't understand Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Tinder, or Bumble, and all those things. And I told my father-in-law back then, I didn't have it as succinct as I have it now. I said, Dad, I'm quitting my job and I'm starting a business where I'm going to teach social media. And I'll never forget, he was sitting there and he had glasses on. This is a 6'5" guy. He's sitting on the chair and he does this. Really? He says, Teddy, have you really thought? My wife was sitting there. He goes, his daughter, he goes, have you really thought this out? And I said, yeah, Dad, I have. I got a plan. He goes, well, I hope you do. Now, that was what my father-in-law said to me. And now fast forward 3 years after that. Business is nowhere near as grandiose as I think it is in my mind today, but it was still pretty good. 3 years later, he comes to me privately, didn't not in front of a bunch of people. And he says, I don't know what you've done, but I can see two things. You're successful enough to run, and jokingly he said, where my daughter didn't move back with me. And it seems that you are happier than you've ever been. That was a pretty cool experience for me.
Yeah, I got some of that too when I started, because this whole career coaching kind of stuff was just almost non-existent.
Yeah.
I mean, there were recruiters and that was about it for the most part. And even had the attorney who drew up the papers to, when I created a corporation, he says, just in case, I hope it doesn't happen, but if you do need an attorney to dissolve this thing, I'm your guy. So, yeah, duly noted. Thanks for that. True story.
You may remember this conversation, Randy, that I had 3 really good friends that I know who play in the sandbox that I was coming to play in, social media strategists.
Right.
And I'm just learning this stuff. And these 3 friends, they were pretty brutal to me. And they's like, how are you going to do this? What's your experience in this? I'm like, I'm going to make my experience as I build this business. I was pretty blunt to say, I don't know all the answers. Now, these 3 friends are still great friends today, but they were very skeptical as to whether or not I could pull off what I said I was going to pull off. And now in some respects, I do business with them. That's pretty cool too. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no doubt. And things change. One of the things that is tough for what you do is that social media is constantly changing. You're on there on LinkedIn every day and you open it up and you go, holy cow, they didn't have that yesterday. And this is different. So you have to continually learn. Yeah. And that's one of the things I write a column in a Sunday paper here in Winston every other Sunday. So it's going to run, well, actually on 9/11, it's going to run coming up. And I'm going to talk about how 9/11 and COVID has changed how we do our work. But then I've got another one that runs near my birthday when I'll be turning, and that runs on September 25th.
Yeah. And
it's about the whole, what advice would you give to somebody starting out? Because the older I get, people look at me and they go, well, maybe this guy can help me. What should I tell my kid coming out of college? That kind of thing. Right. And one of those things is be inquisitive.
Oh, yeah.
Try to learn.
Yeah.
And some like IT jobs, and you used to be in the IT field. That was always changing. Yeah. So you had
to fix my computer now, Randy. I just put the cover down on it and order a new one.
Send it back. I don't want it. So yeah, folks, again, John Hyman, employment attorney, was going to be here today. We'll talk about union organizing, and there's more of that going on these days, and talk about the whole dynamic, union, non-union, that kind of stuff. And he had an emergency, and so he was unable to join us today. We hope to get him back at a future date. We appreciate we've I'd like to say that there's big prizes awaiting everybody who's managed to endure this last hour.
Look, Randy, we went to 14,000 and we've kept them through the entire show.
Yeah, we have. So is that because you were going to reveal
some secret?
Something? I hope it's G-rated, whatever it is.
I offered the audience, you can ask us any question, and they're asking us softball questions. Nobody's asking us anything bizarre. I mean, Todd made us think a little bit. And Lisa, I wish I knew what was going to happen with LinkedIn over the next couple of years. I don't know the answer. Every morning I wake up and I play with what I had to play with. That's all I can do. So,
hey, speaking of LinkedIn, I had a client, a guy named John. This is back.
His last name Smith?
No, not that John, a different John. This is back in 2004. And he came into my office. Again, I was self-employed doing this. And he said, hey, I used to live in California. I moved back to be with family and, restart a business, whatever. And he said, hey, you may want to get on LinkedIn. It's in the beta testing stage. Mm-hmm. This was back. So I got on. I said, John, I'll get on and see what it's like. And that was April of 2004. And so now, I'm on it, but I knew nobody else. I was among the first, and I think you had gone on before I did, and you closed your account.
I said, screw this stuff. This is ridiculous.
You closed your LinkedIn account. Well, I didn't. So I was one of the first 400. I was one of the first 400,000 in the world on this thing. Didn't know a soul on it. So I mentioned it to a couple of clients that were kind of techie guys. I said, play with this thing. And then lo and behold, it took off in a matter of time. But back then, it was just getting started. And I can remember many times where I thought I knew LinkedIn pretty well, and I started to show it to somebody, and I look at the user interface, and it's just a whole lot different. So you got to really keep up with it. And I admire your tenacity with that, because it takes time.
And Deborah, I'm absolutely joking. My CEO, CFO, cash management business partner / wife is downstairs, and if my laptop breaks, she's going to say to me, you better figure it out, big boy, because we're not buying you another one of those big things. No. Yeah, looking back, and we've got just a couple minutes left, and we want to mention our guest that'll be on next week. We'll get to that too.
That's going to be Sarah Rosinski. We'll talk about that a little bit. So I'm not really sure where all this goes, but if we had a crystal ball to look into the future, and I know you've got a crystal ball there. It's a tiny one, but you've got one somewhere.
I mean, look, man, it's almost as powerful as my watch,
I don't know where this conversation is going to go, because I hadn't really thought of it until just now, but sometimes I'm asked about what do you see as the future in the labor market and all that. And, nobody knows. I mean, and you've got this turnover tsunami, and we were talking about that before it actually happened.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm involved with the Human Resources Society. And so that was coming down the pike. It kept saying it's happening. It never did until it did. And then bam, things change. But you think back, look at, and again, this goes back to this article that'll be in Sunday's paper, how we had to pivot. And again, taking this back to the beginning of the show about being late or at the last minute. Mm-hmm. Think about how our world changed at 9/11.
Yeah.
Right. When the towers went down and the Pentagon, and how we did business. I mean, you were in the IT arena. Nobody was buying IT back then. It shut down. I just bought 2 cars, new, like a week before. Yeah. Because I was changing jobs and I was going to make a nice bump in pay and all that. So I went out and bought me 2 cars. So I got 2 brand new cars sitting in the garage. And 9/11 hit that like a day or 3 or 4 later. And I'm thinking, holy cow. So that was and then COVID. And anyway, all point being, you got to be able to pivot.
You got to be able to, yeah.
Remote work, you name it. But American ingenuity, creativity, all of those things transcend generation.
Yeah.
And when push comes to shove, we get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get
Lisa's
it done.
asking, we got to talk about our speaker here in a minute.
Yeah,
Lisa's
let's do
asking
that.
about climate change. Look, Lisa, how it's going to impact the labor market is organizations that don't pay attention and don't care about making pivots and adjustments to support resolving this climate change problem we have. They're going to have a hard time in the next 10 years hiring good people, because you got to care about your community. You got to care about this thing we call Earth. Randy, Sarah Rosinski, man.
Yeah, Sarah's back. Just real quick, she has a book, Unflubbify Your Writing. If you're ever confused about which word to use, that or which, or it's there, all those words that give people trouble, she's going to sort that out for us next week. That'll be on the 14th. We'll have Sarah Rosinski from Colorado. She'll join us live.
And we'll schedule John to get back once he gets done helping his daughter. We'll get back in touch with him, and we'll plan to have him join the show again. So, hey, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy is sponsored in part by the Elder Law Firm. Reach out to me, reach out to Randy. If you want to have a conversation with them, we'll introduce you to them. Hey, buddy, I'll chat to you later, man. Have a good afternoon.
All right.
Take care, folks.